It is so easy to beat people today. They are so soft. They have no work ethic. No one can stick with anything. Everyone's distracted. They're on social media. They're counting their fucking notifications because they can't stick with shit. They can't say no. In order to make $1 million, you have to endure $1 million worth of pain. You might be able to endure $1 million worth of pain over 40 years, or you can crunch it into 4 crazy years. And then after that, you can have whatever you want to have afterwards. If you listen to this and then you're in the same exact conditions as you were before, and then you do not change your behavior, you learned nothing. And so using that definition has at least allowed me to change my behavior faster, which then goes into rate of learning, which I define as intelligence. And so a lot of people are like, man, he's so smart, but he just doesn't. It's like, well, then if he doesn't change his behavior and he's in the same conditions, he's a dummy. He's not that smart. If you are trying to battle the same boss over and over again, and you don't change what you're doing, and the boss keeps beating you, then it's not the game's problem. It's your problem. You are the problem. But there's a very big difference between doing what someone does and doing what they did to get there. And I think this is what's lost in a lot of the content that I see in the entrepreneurial space. And to be clear, whenever I'm trying to get to the next level, I often have to take on things that I don't know how to do. And I have to learn how to do them, which means I have to suck for a period of time. And sucking sucks. But the thing is you have to be able to embrace that period of time and say, like, this is the cost of greatness. The higher up in business you get, the more attractive the opportunities that you have to learn to say no to. And this has been really hard for me because at every level, like I thought, great, I can check the box on distractions. I've learned to say no to $10,000 opportunities. But then when you're making $100,000, then you have to be able to say no to $100,000 opportunities. In the Matrix, Morpheus takes him through a training program to teach him one thing about agents. And so they're walking down the street and there's all these people going, and he says, were you listening to me or are you looking at the woman in the red dress? And he says, look again. He looks back and the woman in the red dress who walked by is an agent pointing a gun in his head. And I see distractions the same way, which is that the better you become, the more attractive the woman in the red dress is. And so you can say no to a 6, but what about a 7?
What about a 12?
Exactly. What about a hypothetical 1,000?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's really what it becomes because there is no limit on the upside. And so that's why having like some of the soft stuff of like, this is the vision, this is what we're trying to do. And there's 100 other things I could do, but each of the cost of those things is the one thing that matters most. The difference between really successful people and the most successful people is that the most successful people say no to almost everything. But success comes down to doing the obvious thing for an extraordinary period of time without convincing yourself you're smarter than you are. If you're insecure, which everybody is, let's be real, you might as well use the insecurity to get something out of it, right? Like one of my favorite things about entrepreneurship is like use what you've got. And so a lot of people think that they need to fix their conditions in order to get like the perfect conditions before they start. But the perfect condition is whatever one you're in because it gives you whatever assets you have. That's the cards that you're dealt. And so you just play the hand. And a lot of people have great cards. It's like, man, I'm so afraid of, it's like, use it. It's like, I have nothing. It makes you very dangerous because you have nothing to lose, right? Like one of the really interesting things I think about it from a business perspective, but it probably applies to everything, is that there's always an advantage and a disadvantage from every position. Everyone's afraid of losing money when they invest, but the only guaranteed investment that doesn't work is never investing to begin with. They take the long failure rather than the short one, right? I mean, it's what it is, right? You just fail long. You and I are going back and forth on trying to figure out how many different ways can I say that either the people that you're worried about judgment are going to die, or that you're going to die, or that even if you do achieve the thing, they won't care anyways. Or if you don't do anything, they won't think about you to begin with. And don't you want to be thought about to begin with? Like, don't you want some level of significance? To understand is to forgive. Rather than saying like, what do I want? It's what do I hate least? And so we get to run it. So then you get to use your run away from engine rather than your go towards to engine,
yeah, the
right?
mouse and the cheese again.
Yeah. You don't gain confidence by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by giving yourself a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. There have been so many times in my life where I knew I needed to do something, and then I filled all this extra time not doing that thing. And then the moment I did it, I was like, wow, that took way less time than I thought it was going to take. And not only that, it took way less time than it took me to delay to actually get to this point. And if I had only started with just doing what I was supposed to do, I could have done 4 or 5 other things that I was also supposed to do by this exact same point. I've tried to eliminate as much time between I think I should do this thing and beginning doing it. And I think you get this positive reinforcement cycle that occurs every time you start. I call it pulling the thread. It's like, I just need to start pulling the thread. And then all of a sudden what feels really unknown becomes very tangible. And you're like, oh, I understand the 6 problems I have to solve to do this big thing. But now I know the problems. And then it feels like you can wrap your arms around it. And then you can start taking it one bite at a time. Right? Like if you can't sit still and ignore notifications and focus for a day, nothing great will get accomplished. Because it's not about what you want, it's about what's required. And whether that's your best or not is irrelevant. It's just there's a price tag and you gotta be willing to pay for it, or you don't get the thing. And a lot of times it's not what you want. And I spend a lot of time trying to dispel the concept of like follow your passion, because I think it leads more people astray than it helps. Because it's very easy for someone who's successful, who's already delegated tons of things, to only then focus on their area of genius and then say, here for my seat, do what I do. I'd say one of the strongest mental frames that has gotten me through my hardest times is thinking this will be the story that I will one day tell. And that means the harder it is, the bigger the dragon, the more epic the story, and by consequence, the more epic the hero. If you think about the difference between winners and losers, winners define themselves by what they made happen, and losers define themselves by what happened to them. And the difficult part of the lonely chapter is that the Rocky cutscene lasts 90 seconds in the movie and lasts 5 years in reality. The difficulty with personal development and entrepreneurship is that you don't know when the end is coming, but you still need to fight like the second mouse who gets out, gets dried off, and gets put back in. You won't die. And if you do die, you won't care because you'll be dead. Best case, you win. Worst case, it won't matter. If you have judgmental parents or judgmental friends or judgmental whatevers, and you date people and you bring them home, if they say, I don't think this is the girl for you, they're right every single time, your entire life, except for the one person that you decide to marry. And then they are absolutely wrong at the time that it mattered most. And the thing is they get to say on your 6th girlfriend and 7th girlfriend and 8th girlfriend, because let's face it, you've been alive for a while. I have a perfect guess. I'm right 100% of the time. This roulette, we'll see how long this one lasts. And 2 years in, they're like, see, you finally broke up with her. I told you at the beginning it wasn't gonna last. Well, it never lasts except for the one that's gonna stick. Duh. And the business never works until it's the one that does. And the episode doesn't take off except for the one that does. And whether it's 10 or 10,000, eventually one does, because when you do more, you get better at doing. Even if your goal was to be number one at business, it's like by what metric? Enterprise value, growth, profit, revenue, all of a sudden, okay, maybe it's richest man in the world. Okay, for how long? Look at the history of mankind. Not one person has ever been richest man forever. And so you get to touch the top, even if you're that one guy, for a moment, and then it's gone again. And so you can't have that as the end point, because it is by its very nature finite. But the competitor whose objective is to continue to play can't be beaten, because by playing, he wins. The reason the goal isn't coming at you fast enough is because every person you've seen accomplish the goal, you only see it the moment they accomplish it. And the reason that it hurts so much when people are like, must be nice, oh, that happened overnight, is because every time you fail, no one cares and no one sees. But when you finally win, people take notice.
Discredited.
But it's the only time they notice is when you actually win. And so to even further reinforce the point, the fact that everyone looks like an overnight success means that the 10 years where they sucked, no one saw. And so the fear that you have about people noticing the fact that you fail is ridiculous, because they're barely going to notice when you succeed. You can try to be lucky and pick the one perfect thing and try and make it. But if you don't want to try and be lucky, you can just do so much work that you will brute force your way to figuring it out. Like if you do 1,000 podcasts, you'll be pretty good at podcasts, right? But if you try to say, okay, you're brand new and all you have to do is make one perfect podcast, the problem is that you don't have the perspective from which to make a judgment to say what is good, because you have zero data to base anything off of. And so you're basing your idea of a perfect podcast on something that you've literally never done before. And so doing the volume gives you the perspective to then have the best podcast at number 1,000 or 1,001. Right now, many of you are creating stories that you tell yourselves to make yourself feel better about why your product isn't as good as it should be, but you have an excuse that only you need to believe. And you believe that excuse, so it excuses you from working harder on the stuff you know you should be doing but aren't. And that work, the work you know you should be doing but aren't, is the opportunity, because that is the work that your competitors also aren't doing. When you're growing in a business, it's very painful. When you're stagnating in a business and you're plateaued and you don't know what to do, it's very painful. When you're declining and you also don't know what to do, it's very painful. And so that means that all conditions of reality are painful. If pain is a prerequisite for reality, then it means it's just a signal that we are alive. And so in thinking about that, rather than pain as a problem, it is a signal that I'm breathing. And then
becomes irrelevant. If we want to be more godlike in our lives, the distance that we can shrink between wanting to do something or thinking something should be done and it being done is a direct indication of our personal power in our lives. Waking up and then trying to shrink the time between when I wake up and when I start working, and shrinking the time between one task and the next task. Preparation is just a stage of the work. And so if I need to prepare to work, then that's fine as long as it's related to the work that I'm going to be doing. Champions just interpret anxiety as excitement. And if you're excited to go up, then you're like, I'm amped, versus I'm stressed. You have to do it so many times that by the last time you're doing it, you're bored of it. Like you don't even want to see the thing again. When you're sick of it is the point where you'll have no adrenal response to the stimulus because you've seen it so many times. You could do it in your sleep because you hate it at this point. And then when you get up, you're like, oh my God, let's just do this. The best art is art where the artist makes it for themselves, and where you see commercial work is where a bunch of people are trying to make something for an audience. And so they're trying to like rinse and recycle stuff that actually solves no one's problems because no one is actually the audience. Whereas when you make it for yourself, there's thousands of people just like you who will have the same depth of understanding of it, but it feels selfish in the moment to make something for yourself. But when you make it for yourself, you actually make it for everyone. If you want the work that you have to last and to be meaningful and make an impact, it comes from 100 golden BBs of 100 particularities, of 100 peculiarities that you are picky about, because the whole thing needs to work. And what happens is if you have a big project, lots of people have to get involved, but there still needs to be one vision. And otherwise it looks like a Frankenstein where everyone just checks a box of something they did in the past, they just copy and paste it over, and then it doesn't resonate with anyone because again, they just did it for everyone rather than for the artist. And so using that as a frame has given me permission to be me in an unreasonable world. But then like the difference between 5 and the next 95 times is what goes from being great to being a masterpiece. And like it's that next 95 that I think is what makes people world class. And that's where everyone falls off. And that's why most people aren't. I think most people feel really lonely when you want something that doesn't currently exist. And so some people call that dreams, some people call that goals, whatever it is, you're trying to pull something from your mind into reality and you want it done a certain way. And if it's not done that way, it's not what you imagined. And so people on the outside will throw stones and call you names that they think will change your behavior and get you to stop. And the more I have been the person trying to pull things into reality, the more I've tried to weather and build kind of defenses against those things. When those stones get hurled at you by being called a control freak or by saying you micromanage things or that you have incredibly high standards, the answer is yes, because I want it done right the first time. If you have enough will, it's going to get done the way that I want it to get done regardless, and it'll be less painful if we just do it right the first time, because we will still have to do it, and you may have to do it 3 or 4 more times, but eventually you will just succumb to the fact that we're going to do it this way. All of the great things that have happened for humanity have been from one man or woman who had an idea and just wouldn't let people shake it from them. When we're organizing opportunities that we're going to pursue with a business, we look at what are the ones that we have the absolute highest likelihood of success, that we need no new skills and no new effort. If we can do that, or the least amount of new effort and no new skills, that would be the first thing we're going to do. And then once we take off all the ones that take basically no effort and no extra skills, we're like, okay, which ones take more effort and still no skills? And then once we do that, then we're like, okay, now we can start learning a new skill. And of the different skills that we could learn, which of these is going to give us the highest leverage, as in most output for the least amount of input? And that's pretty much how we tick down which of these opportunities we want to pursue, because those have the lowest likelihood of not happening.
You're going to lose sleep. You'll doubt whether it'll work. You'll stress to make ends meet. You won't finish your to-do list. You'll wonder whether you made the right call and have no way to know for years. This is what hard feels like, and that's okay. Everything worth doing is hard, and the more worth doing it is, the harder it is. The greater the payoff, the greater the hardship. If it's hard, good. It means no one else will do it. More for you.
Personal growth is training yourself on how you respond to hard. Because in the early days, hard was, ooh, stop. This isn't good. This is a warning sign. This is a red flag. I should slow down, or I should stop, I should pivot. But the more I think about it as a competitive landscape, as I'm clear on what this path is supposed to look like, and these rocks and these dragons are things that I'm going to have to slay along the way to get the princess or get the treasure, I get happier about the harder it is because I know that no one else will follow.
It's a selection effect.
And I think if you can shift from this is hard to no one else will be able to do this, then it flips from being this thing that you're like, oh, poor me, to oh, poor everyone else who's going to have to try. And I think that is so much more motivating as a frame for the exact same circumstance. Once you've already won, people are like, he's amazing, he's so good. But like, that's the time when you need it the least. And so you always have to be the person who roots for you before everyone else does. It won't get harder. Like, this is the hardest part. And so if you can just make it through this, everything else is downhill. It's not that the things that the dragons are going to slay aren't going to get bigger. They are. But you become so much more equipped to slay them back. And you have so many more allies. You have people in the stands cheering for you. You have the audience. You have all of these other things that are behind you. But at the beginning, it's just you with a stick against a bear. And arguably, that fight is a harder fight to win than beating a dragon when you have a nuclear bomb and 6 nations behind you. And so it's not even like the size of the hardship, it's just also the resources and how few of them you have, and how so much of the beginning is literally burning the one thing you have, which is time, because you have no leverage. You don't have the money to pay other people to help you. You don't have the resources to go like get someone no one can learn it for you. It's like there's a lot of the things that we care about a lot, like no one can work out for you. It doesn't matter how much money you have, no one can learn skills for you. And so in the early days, like it feels so painful because you're like, you look around to see who can help you and then you're like, it's me again. Expecting it to be easy is what makes it much harder than it ever is.
When you don't have anything to say no to, it's easy to focus on one thing. As success begins to get you more opportunities, your ability to say no becomes increasingly important. And that's something that I'm feeling now.
The more successful you become, or the more able you become, the hotter the woman in the red dress is, right? Like you got a homeless girl that you're walking, past on the street. She's like all dirty, but she's got a red dress on. You're like, the thing is that homeless girl, when you were in your apartment, actually looked like
pretty hot.
Yeah, right. She's like, I'm not, I could, But then the better you get, the bigger the opportunities, and that's where you have not your hypothetical 10, but what about your hypothetical 100? If you had to create a human, what would you put them through to make them tough? It probably wouldn't be a really chill life.
Yeah.
What would you put them through to make them patient? Well, you probably wouldn't give them things immediately. And so it's like we want these traits, but each of the traits has a price tag attached to it. And it's just like, do you want to pay the price tag to get the thing? And so I think if people reframed the period of life that they're going through as the price that they're paying out of their wallet, but the wallet is their time, is the seconds of life that they're trading for it, then I think more people would be willing to make the trade. Because at least when I look at myself, like when I'm 80 something years old and I'm looking back on my life, I want to have these traits. But in order to have those traits, I know I have to go through these things. And I think for me, that's given me a lot of comfort in hard times. As soon as you get great at one thing, you realize just the tremendous amount of hours and work that it takes to be great at one thing. And then there's this moment that I can express personally, which is you realize that there's so few things that you can be great at. And then the discipline comes down to saying, what are the 2 or 3 things that I can be really good at in my life? Because it will take me 5 to 7 years to be exceptional at this one thing. Starting at the top and then wanting to cross the first one off after your first day, but then realizing you still haven't done it well enough to cross it off. And you're like, wait, I have to do another day and I still haven't, quote, made a dent in this list. And then you do it another day and a third day and a 5th day and a 5th week. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I think I've got the first one done. And then you still look at this list, but along the way of doing that first one, you realize 20 other things that you could add to that list. And so I have translated every single negative comment that comes to me where someone complains about me, so flipping the script, to Alex lives his life in a way that I would not prefer. And so it's actually been this very weird, like, oh, they said all this stuff. And I was like, does that mean I live my life in a way they wouldn't prefer? Great, because they live their life in a way that I wouldn't prefer. And that's why it's their life and I live my life. And it's just been this really wonderful reframe that like just almost comically completely minimizes most things.
Yes.
But I think that complaints come down to that. So you have circumstances, you have other people, and then you have self. And that's it. Those are the three big ones that everyone puts all of their blame on. And so the first 2 obviously don't serve you. The third sometimes serves you depending on what you do as a result of it. Those big 3 has just been a really easy filter. It's like, oh, am I blaming circumstances? Am I blaming other people? Am I blaming me? Everything around you will try and force you to dilute yourself. It will force you to try and merge in, fit in with your surroundings. Like this force is natural and it's inevitable, and yet we have to fight it. And the fact that it's hard does not make it less worth it.
Things are not what they are. Things are what we think they are. For instance, you're doing a hard workout, which gives you a signature feeling. You're laid on the floor, panting, heart rate at 180, sweating from everywhere with the taste of metal in your mouth. This is oddly enjoyable, but if this exact same sensation was to spontaneously occur in your car while sat in traffic, you'd call an ambulance for fear that you're having a heart attack. Framing is everything. Sometimes you just want to stand in the corner and stare out of the window. The problem is, when you're not smoking and staring out of the window, you're an antisocial, friendless idiot. If you stand and stare out of the window with a cigarette, you're a f***ing philosopher. The power of reframing things cannot be overstated. It's significantly easier to find a way to reframe your experiences as enjoyable while you improve them, rather than waiting for them to be done before you give yourself license to be happy.
vast majority of business owners work a fair amount. They just work on the wrong stuff and they do it the wrong way. And so they get so little for their effort that they wonder when they're at home empty-handed in bed, why isn't this working when I am working? But if you define work, at least the way I do, which is output. So I define work by output. And in order to get output, it's volume times leverage. So how many times you do the thing times how much you get for each time you do it. And so that is the, do you work smart or do you work hard? It's you do both. You do as many reps as you possibly can, and you do it with the most leverage possible. So if I make 100 phone calls, the leverage that I can have there would be how skilled I am. So if I make 100 calls, I might get 10 times more. And so I worked more. I had more output than somebody who has less skill. But the only way you get skilled is by doing more inputs, by working more, doing more and getting better. We need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. Bad things happen all the time, and they only become interrelated if you let it affect your behavior. It only drinks in that which makes it strong. The more times you do what is required to get what you want, the more times you get what you want.
And so what happens is it will give you a very real look at how long you're actually working versus how long you think you're working, and you tell other people working, and you Instagram how long you're working. And as I've become more efficient at work, meaning my output per unit of time has gone up, I've realized that there's just been a significant decrease in the distractions that I allow to interrupt me. Again, if you want to stay focused, staying focused is not like zeroing in and saying, I'm going to do it just like, I'm going to just zoom in on this thing. It's more that focus occurs when you remove everything else. What's left is focus.
The best version of your life isn't copying Hormozy or copying Williamson. It's being able to, with nuance, apply the principles that are generalizable across domains, but then having the wherewithal, the discernment to apply the nuance to your specific circumstance. And being able to map those two things, I think, is the skill that has got me the disproportionate return on my life. Most people who claim to be perfectionists are not perfectionists. They're actually procrastinating because they're not doing anything.
Right.
And so it just is a socially acceptable label, because the real perfectionists feel this sickness where they like want to itch their skin off until the thing's done, but they are trying to get it done. Whereas the perfectionist or the procrastinator uses that to say, like, I'm not sure, I'm just getting it right. But like the person who's an actual perfectionist, one wants to finish and is working every hour of every day on the thing and seeing progress towards it. Because if you don't know how your thing is getting better, you're not a perfectionist, you're just ignorant. Perfectionism is around volume. It's like, that is what we are optimizing towards. Because if we knew how people responded ahead of time to content, then we would make things differently than we do. If we're heroes in our own story, it's not avoiding pain, it's choosing from the very beginning the alchemy, which is like, you have these terrible situations. It's like, and you have the opportunity to turn them into magic and skip or shortcut all the growth you're going to have in a really short period of time simply by twisting the knife and being like, I'm going to do something about it. I think being really specific about your pain is helpful. Even more so, like, what is the twisting the pain? What is twisting the knife? Like, how do you operationalize twisting the knife, right? Instead of being like, I hate my life, it's, I hate the way Andrew makes me feel when he says that I'm a piece and I'm not going to amount to anything, because he's right. Like, why does it hurt me? Like, if someone says, Alex, you're a piece, you're not going to amount to anything.
If someone accuses you of being poor or fat.
Right. I'd be like, I have evidence to the contrary, so this will probably not bother me. The things that bother us are the ones that have an element of truth, or sometimes not an element, are comprised almost entirely of truth, and we just don't want to look at it. And so I think it's the twisting the knife is looking in the mirror and saying, what if they're right? Manifestation is bullshit, and action is the only thing that matters.
Wouldn't you say that manifestation is the first step before action?
So it depends on how we define manifestation. So if we define manifestation as like an electrical signal occurs in your brain, sure. But I don't think that's how most people describe it. I would say be totally on board with manifestation if we define it as knowing that. Like, I know that this is possible. Like, I saw this, or I have some perspective that has changed. To me, that's just knowledge. So if you have knowledge that you can't start a bank, you have to have the knowledge that you can start a bank before you start a bank. That makes sense. So fine. But the bank doesn't occur until you take the action.
Whenever I get to a low point where I think, why do I even bother? I just remind myself, this is where most people stop. And this is why they don't win. And this relates to another one, which is a reminder for the gladiators in the arena who feel beat up and scarred with no hope in sight. Building a business is hard. Hard feels shitty. This is what hard feels like. And this is why most people can't do it. But you can.